I have Peter joining me from Orcfax, Decentralized Oracle, building on Cardano, and we're going to learn a little bit more about this one and how it's a little bit different and what they're building, and also their upcoming launch, which I'm really excited about as well. So, Peter, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Pete. Thanks for having us on.
So can you give me a really good overview of what Orcfax is and how it differs in the Cardano ecosystem?
Sure. Orcfax is an Oracle service, which means we take real world data and we report it on chain. We put it inside a Cardano transaction datum so that smart contract scripts can read that data and use it in whatever business logic they want to execute in their smart contracts. And the most typical example we know, most people in crypto know about is, Chainlink or Charlie in the Cardano space already, where we report price feeds. So if there's a change in the exchange rate between ADA and USD, that's an event that happens in the real world. That's based on market data, and we come up with a price, and we say, okay, the price has changed, and that gets reported on chain. And there's, that sounds really simple, but there's a lot to that process, and there's a lot of, I think, steps along the way that can improve the quality of that process, the credibility, and the trustworthiness of that process. And Orcfax is really an explicit effort to improve upon the first generation oracles and do a better job of ensuring that we can trust real world data to be authentic and accurate, given, we're only just at the cusp of the smart contract revolution, the blockchain revolution. We're in a bit of a bear market today, but I think doesn't take away from the fact that the technology itself is fundamentally revolutionary. This ability to create distributed trust in these trustless, permissionless, decentralized networks, it's not going away. And I think we need projects like ours to leverage that technology and show what can be done with it and how we can improve upon not just the blockchain world, but the real world itself, how we can take that back to the real world and offer something back, not just for our own little blockchain degen space, but again, I'm a true believer in blockchain for good and for the fact that it has power to deliver some social impact. So Orcfax is all about that. That's the larger vision, mission. And of course, we're getting very technical and specific then and bringing that vision down into something very practical and useful for the Cardano ecosystem. And there's lots of reasons why we're doing this on Cardano as well. We may want to get into that as well. But in a nutshell, that's what an oracle is, right? For people that, back in ancient times, Greek times, oracles were the people that were channel messages from the gods. So it's a good metaphor for this idea of taking data from somewhere else and bringing it, information and relaying it to another sphere. So I actually really like the name oracles quite a bit to define what we do. I think it's a cool name, but that's Orcfax as an oracle. And we're starting with price feeds. So you mentioned that we're very close to a launch. So we're a matter of days away from offering a free ADA to USD price feed on mainnet using our Orcfax collecting and validating technology. We'll be announcing all of that very shortly. I'm not sure when your audience will see this, so I'm not 100% sure of the timing, but we're very close.
In regards to the data that's going on, so the very first one that you have is that USD ADA price that you're going to have on chain. What other type of data can an oracle provide to smart contracts? Is it just price feed? Is that the market that you're going for?
Well, that's what everybody knows oracles as of today. And Chainlink is the biggest fish in the sea out there. I think most people have heard that name before. That's really the biggest oracle provider in the Ethereum EVM space. So price feeds is just really the tip of the iceberg as far as we're concerned. We've already seen many other really great use cases in the blockchain space. I mean, Chainlink being a kind of an industry leader there. So one of the more obvious ones that people will go to next as an example is for example sports scores. So we have like gambling apps or fantasy league apps that require reporting real world data about what's happening in a soccer game or in a football game, in a hockey game. And that, again, is also real world data that needs to be valid, that needs to be authentic and accurate, because it can feed into a smart contract that's sitting there with a betting app, for example. So it's a very simple use case. Put your money down 2-1 on Chelsea, Man U. What was the final score? That final score has to come in. The final score triggers a smart contract. The smart contract is immutable. It'll execute based on outside data. Once it's on chain, you can't control it. So a vector for attack is attacking that information that's coming in, whether it's price feed or sports scores and so forth. But that's another very easy use case to get your head around, this idea that you got a smart contract betting app that's just waiting for a result, and the data comes in, and whatever that data is, whatever that score is, the smart contract will pay out, and betting app one wallet will win, one wallet will lose, right? So, but then with some really interesting things we're seeing now with Chainlink, for example, is crop insurance. I think is a really interesting example we're starting to see. So farmers have huge issues with, if an extreme weather event happens and their lands flood, it could take months, sometimes, sometimes even years before they see a payout from some kind of insurance, whether that's government or private sector. And it's a huge issue for the ability to rebuild and get back on your feet. And we're seeing more and more of it with the extreme weather events we're seeing due to global climate change. And so one interesting product we're seeing in the Ethereum space that we're keeping an eye on is this idea of parabolic, like extreme weather event insurance. So if you say I have some land in this particular geographic polygon, and if there's an extreme weather event, and we can verify that yes, there was extreme flooding, there was all this kind of damage. If that data comes in, the insurance claim will be paid out automatically on chain immediately into your wallet. So we've already seen several examples of this where these interesting products have been developed, and claimants are getting paid immediately. And it's a huge breakthrough in the insurance industry. But that's one example of so many where, again, blockchain stands to still, the original promise of blockchain still stands. It stands to disintermediate so many industries and business processes where trust is critical, right? And where we can disintermediate that trust. And insurance, gambling. But I myself have quite a strong interest in going even beyond that. Like I believe I'm very interested I'm always interested in new developing technologies, and certainly like everybody else, I've been keeping my eye on AI as well. And all the fear around runaway AI and how we can control it. And one of what I keep coming back to, and I've participated in several workshops in this in the last year, and so much of it keeps coming back to like anchoring trust in humans and human agents. And so we're very much interested in this idea of like using human agents to gather data about the real world. And like this is, for example, when somebody's giving a political speech, recording it from multiple devices, being able to verify the authenticity of those devices and triangulate data from more than one source. But to the point where we can counteract disinformation, misinformation, deep fakes, with authenticated real world data. So now we've gone from price feeds to gambling to insurance to like what is really happening, what WTF was going on in the world, right? And so, but at the end of the day, like nation state can't Sybil attack Bitcoin anymore. So no matter what AI can get up to, like the fact that we've developed this distributed technology consensus system that is Sybil resistant actually gives us resistance, not just to human bad actors, but in my opinion, as a counterweight to the AI threat that a lot of people are talking about. So I see oracles playing, and that's obviously as a long-term mission and vision. But to me, there's price feeds is only the first step in a long array of things where oracles are actually going to be the critical piece of infrastructure in seeing through the promise of blockchain and really, using it to make this social impact that all of us, the people that are still here, the ones that are still around in this bear market and still building, we're doing it because I think many of us have that same vision and have that same belief.
Wow, starting point from price feeds all the way to WTF is happening in the world. That's
the nature of reality. Yes.
Yeah. I love those real world examples as well, so where oracles could be used. And I think it really gives people a better understanding of those oracles. Now, what about the data that you guys get? Like, how do you get the data in? And can't the smart contracts just use the same source of data that you guys are using?
Yeah. And I think that's a really key critical question is why not just take that data and just grab it from wherever? And this is the role that oracles are playing. We're trying to like create trustless data feeds, right? This idea that, because if you do that, you're trusting an API provider or whoever took that data and put it on chain. And we're seeing that a lot of that discussion in the Cardano space right now, where a lot of projects had to get off the ground and essentially get outside data in a lot of cases themselves. And so that, for good reason, there wasn't a legitimate Oracle provider in the Cardano space until Charlie managed to get on mainnet after Vassal, and now us. So But yes, the reason you want to use an Oracle instead is that if you are you are a DeFi product, you have a smart contract, you have an app that you're running on chain, you want your users to trust that you aren't just making up that data, that you aren't just taking it from one place and moving it to the other. And that's, even in current oracles, that's to us is a major blind spot that we're concerned about. But the whole role of oracles is to disintermediate the trust in how the data was gathered, collected, and reported on chain, so that you can say, yes, this smart contract, it might be in their interest to report data a certain way, but if they can prove that they're getting their data from an independent, trustless source, then that fits the whole formula of a trustless, decentralized system. And we don't have to put our trust in this DeFi DApp provider. We can audit the smart contract code. We know what it's going to do. The only variable we don't know about is this outside data coming in. If they're the same people giving us the outside data, we have to trust them that they're being honest about that. And we still have a lot of DEXs still have their own order books that are not being made available, for example, that kind of thing. So this is, to me, I see it as like a progression of decentralization. Like, we all came in full steam, 100% decentralized. We've all learned that that's not as easy as it sounds. A lot of people have used gradual decentralization as an excuse not to do decentralization, but I think there's still something to the argument that it does take time, it does take progress. And we, again, as a community, and certainly I feel very comfortable being in the Cardano community, I feel like that community shares that ethos, is that we want to move to this gradual decentralization. So a big step of that is going to be separating DApps from their own data sources. And so the other issue we have that I see happening in the Oracle space is that there's still a lot of trusted data providers in the whole pipeline. So you might be saying, fine, we're a DApp and we're taking data from an Oracle, but if that Oracle is getting the data from a single source and all it's doing is relaying and repackaging and bringing it back to you, how much now you're trusting that original source, right? So in the example that I gave for the crop insurance, it's getting most of its data from Google BigQuery. And so you could say that's, in the enterprise corporate world, that's a trustworthy party. But at the end of the day, knowing what we know about NSA and all these other things, like, can you really prove that at the end of the day, if there's a single source of data, even if it's Google BigQuery, how can I trust it? And so the way you can trust it is by providing transparency over the process of data collection, gathering, collection, and validation. And that's what Orcfax is intending to do. And one of our first principles is, for any data feed that we provide, we will only provide data feeds where we can triangulate the source data. And by that I mean is that we don't rely on a single source of data. So we're not simply just taking data from one place, repackaging it and publishing it. We're saying something is happening in the real world. There's a change in the ADA USD price. So there's multiple independent centralized exchanges reporting those price changes. So if we gather the data from those, but not just to have one data not one data point collecting, to have multiple servers or nodes around the world collecting that data from more than 3 or more APIs at the same time, then coming back going, are we all seeing the same thing? Are there any anomalies? We've already found in our testing that it makes it really, really dirt simple to identify red flags where there might be a bad actor or simply network mistakes, network errors happening somewhere along the data collection pipeline. But that to us is really critical to be able to, for a user to be able to all of that. So even if a smart contract, somehow a bad actor is able to get into the data sourcing pipeline somewhere along the way, introduce bad data, have a payout, at the very least, we should be able to backtrack and audit what happened, where, when, and where that data came from, and where, and have some traceability around that. We have none of that right now. Most oracles, they have a single datum, a single piece of data that shows up as a magic data point on chain, and all of the context around how that data was created, gathered, used. You have to infer, you have to trust the brand, the Oracle provider, that they've done their due diligence. And what we want to change in Orcfax is to provide open access to that entire pipeline, so that what we're doing is as we're collecting the data, as all our various nodes are collecting data, as they're comparing it, as we're normalizing it, as we're validating it, it's generating audit logs that get packaged along with the original Cardano datum transaction, gets linked back to it. We put it on a decentralized storage network called Arweave that's similar to IPFS Filecoin, but it's a permissionless network where anybody can go audit those packages. And so this is the value add that we're trying to add, like, as far as when I was talking about, solving this idea of like making oracles more trustless and decentralized. is the ability to make the data gathering, validation, and publication transparent, so that the word trust and trustless is kind of like, it's kind of the two sides of one coin, right? But you can then, like, you can have more trust in the process, so the feeds themselves are trustless, and that's the hopeful end result. And that's one of the big things we're trying to do differently. So any feeds we have to be able to have at least 3 independent sources, and then we have multiple sources accessing those 3 plus independent feeds. And then we have a validation process where all the business logic and that's applied is all audited, available. And then all of that will go into a Cardano datum. And then on top of that, we made sure that this data, given my own background as a digital archivist, I've spent a long time working on metadata standards for archival packaging and so forth. So all of this audit logs, all this schema is actually being formatted into JSON LD, which is like the web's most predominant way of making linked data accessible. It's the most predominant form of RDF serialization, which makes data machine readable. And then we use ontologies and taxonomies from schema.org, which actually makes data sets understandable across taxonomies, across industries. And so it essentially makes our data machine learning capable, ready. As a secondary use of our data is going to be for training AI with real world data, with authentic real world data, because our data sets are extremely machine readable and reusable. And so we envision, as we start the Orcfax service up and running, that over time we will start generating this data lake of authenticated facts, starting with price feeds, but who knows where we'll be 2-3 years from now. And essentially creating an archive of like authenticated real world facts, where maybe the idea of what the real world is or isn't starts to become a little bit more strange 10-20 years from now. So that's but as of today, we start with a very practical need in DeFi, and DeFi is very exciting, and we want to, as an Oracle service, that's going to be our bread and butter for the first year for sure. So we're very excited about launching our first price feed. The other thing we're very conscious of is trying to make a sustainable service, so that, the intent for right now, Orcfax is incorporated as a company in the British Virgin Islands. But again, going back to the gradual decentralization, the end goal is to have the entire network run as a fully decentralized autonomous organization, where the token itself will serve as a governance token, and we'll take our lead from all the great stuff, all the work that's being in the Cardano governance space. And we are actively participating in that as well, as kind of like a stepping stone to our own full decentralized governance. But the idea is to make it, in order to do that, the service has to be sustainable. It has to be financially sustainable. It has to have cost recovery. It has to be able to pay for itself. So one of our number one concerns has always been keeping costs down. Like, how do we minimize the cost of publishing data on chain and archiving it afterwards? We spent a lot of time thinking about how to reduce transaction costs and so forth. So one of the more exciting things that we started doing with the price feeds was realizing that we could very easily publish data in an array where we could have the ADA USD ADA feed in the same feed, and that halves the cost of running that feed there as well. So that's another interesting development we're working on with the price feed side of things. So there's lots, and then we're spending a lot of time studying blockchain innovations outside of Cardano as well. We attended a really great blockchain conference in Paris and picking up some really great ideas from the Ethereum space, where, as you know, gas fees are a way bigger problem. So we're picking up some interesting publication formulas from that space as far as like cost reduction is concerned. But yeah, so this is all part of our formula, is to figure out ways to bring that cost down. With the price feed, it means by doing a reverse feed in the same datum, we just half the cost of publishing that data feed there. And that's all to the end. First of all, so that we make it very cost effective and as cheap as possible for people to use our feeds. But with the end goal, making this an entirely self-sustaining system, where again, the users paying for the feeds pays the validators to go and collect the data and so forth. And we want this to be a completely self-sustaining system by, we hope our roadmap is 4 to 5 years for that to arrive. So a critical part of that, every step along the way, is how do we reduce cost? How do we reduce cost? And that's, we're doing some really great R&D right now with some future integrators that are helping us arrive at some of these design decisions. But now, over the last few weeks, obviously we've stabilized our schemas, our formats, and we're getting ready for launch very soon. And
super exciting.
yeah, it's exciting for us too.
Super, super exciting. Now, I absolutely love that sustainability approach as well, to make sure that costs are down, everything is going to be future proofed and whatnot. What about competition in this, and how much of a market is there in the Cardano space? Is there enough there? Since we have Charlie 3, Chainlink may eventually come into the Cardano ecosystem as well. Is there enough space for all these oracles, and what you guys are going to provide?
I believe there is. I believe there's big enough market for more than one oracle. Charlie, ourselves, and maybe another one. To be frank, I think Chainlink is nowhere near introducing themselves to Cardano, despite what might have been announced in the past. And there's various theories around why that may be. But I think, a lot of it is like I talked about, there's a lot of DeFi applications that haven't made the switch to decentralized oracles yet. And I expect their user communities will start demanding it once they see them in practice in other platforms in Cardano starting to adopt them. A lot of it is like simply inventing a market that isn't there yet. Like all the use cases I just threw out at you there. And we could very well make those products ourselves, but we'd rather start partnering with people that can say, hey, this feed will help us do that. And weekly, we are entertaining calls and discussions with potential integrators that have really innovative, interesting product ideas that don't exist yet, that require a decentralized Oracle feed. And so I think given what we're seeing from that kind of response, the very, very, very early days we're still in. I mean, people keep, we really, in my opinion, we're only it's like we're on square one for Cardano DeFi. I know it's been a lot of fits and starts to get here for various reasons, but I still, for better or for worse, we're starting a little bit slower than some of the other chains, but I think there's a lot of better in there as well. And so, no, I truly believe that, we're just, we are one of the true believer builders that are just, we're here, we're not going anywhere. We believe that this market will turn the corner. And when it does, we think Cardano will explode, and we're going to be right in the middle of it. So we think there's a huge market, and we think there'll be, we would like to standardize on how datum is read on chain, but already Charlie has taken a different approach than we have. So right off the bat already, there's two different technical ways of taking data from an Oracle provider. And so again, we think that's a good thing. We think it's good for the community to have more than one option, just like there should be more than one DEX, right? Like it's good to have competition. They're nice people. I've sat down and had coffee with the team and vice versa, and we communicate with each other. There's mutual respect between the teams. I think it's a good thing, and I wouldn't mind if a third Oracle popped up as well to give us another way of looking at things on Cardano, right? So I have a lot of faith that there's more than enough business for Orcfax as a business entity to get the business up and running, to get the finances up and running, to get to the point where we can make this an entirely self-sustaining organization.
I think also the important fact there is that you are taking different approaches. There is different innovation. So people can pick and choose how they want to integrate the oracles in. So I love that, that they are very different. Now, what about documentation for developers that do want to integrate this in? So the first price feed obviously is free. Developers, DApp developers can start using it. Is there documentation available yet? Where can we access it all from?
Yeah. So we have some just very basic first version of the document. We have a doc site. So our website is orcfax.io, orcfax.io, and there's a link to the docs from there, or simply docs.orcfax.io. And so there's some background material on what oracles are about, what they are, what we're trying to do. And then there's a user manual section targeted to developers to say, if you want to integrate our price feed, this is how you go about it. We're in the midst of creating a Pi Cardano tutorial to demonstrate how that's done, and hopefully have that ready in a week or two. To go hand in hand with that mainnet feed, so people can experiment with incorporating that feed into using Pi Cardano, which we think is a fantastic platform. All of our own integration code we try to standardize on Python for a variety of reasons. So that has been a really great fit for us, and we're starting to move a lot of our own Plus development over to Option and Pi Cardano for that reason.
Fantastic. So, that's really cool.
So, and again, like as yet another way, like you said, it's good to have alternatives, right? So here's we're a team in that space, and there's other people using other tools. And I think it's just part of demonstrating that Cardano is a healthy ecosystem. And again, I think we're just, we are a sleeping giant, I believe. I truly believe that. And it's just, bear market doesn't necessarily help when you're staring at spreadsheets, but there is a lot of benefit and there's a lot of R&D and innovation happening right now. So it's really exciting to be in the midst of it.
There certainly are a lot of Python developers out there. So the fact that you guys are going with option and Cardano and all that, it's going to make it really easy for a lot of developers just to pick it up and go, oh, this is easy. That's great. So
I think those projects are really underrated. The potential of, like I said, we're in a bear market. Once the bull market hits and Cardano gets some attention, if we can suddenly go, hey, Python developers, all 100 million of you, like whatever the number is these days, right? But I think it's the largest amount out there. Yeah. So. No, that's part of our strategy is to make this to extend Orcfax beyond Cardano. Cardano is our home. That's our L1 blockchain. But we see our role as being like being an infrastructure provider for Cardano, and that means at some point reaching out beyond Cardano. And Python to me is the biggest gateway drug that we have. So,
brilliant. Well, I'm looking forward to the launch and seeing more projects take up Orcfax. And you got your token launch coming up soon as well. I missed out on the ISPO by like a couple of epochs, I think. So, unfortunately, I won't get any of those tokens through that. But I know other people will hit the various dexes soon. Is there any final words that you'd like to leave the audience with?
No, I just feel really buoyed by the support we've seen. Like as we've become a little bit more public over the last few months, we're finally ready to switch from R&D to implementation. There's a lot of people that appreciate what we're doing and understand what we're doing, and I love seeing we've had a very active Discord the last few months. And by the way, like anybody that's more interested in Orcfax, pop in there, ask any questions. Our team is always standing by to have a chat. And so I think if anything, I've been really excited about the community that's started to build up around Orcfax. And it tells me that we're onto something, that we're ready to offer something that people want and need. And we're certainly getting that impression from our own community. So I just want to say thanks to everybody that's been along for the ride and that's been supporting us. Like you mentioned, all those early ISPO participants, like they were people, we were on their radar early on, and they had faith and trust in what we're doing. And I just want to thank all those people, and onward and upward.
Brilliant. I'll grab all the links and references to the Discord server, the website, documentation. I'll add them to the show notes. Anyone that is interested can dive into your community and find out a little bit more, and hopefully develop some really cool dApps using your Oracle.
That'd be wonderful. Thanks, Pete.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, gotta do it like that. You've been listening to the Learn Cardano podcast. Gotta get it hype. Crypto is what we like, but this is not investment or financial advice. Gotta do your research, cause it's risky. We know it is. This show is educational and it's informative. Crypto's the future, really, it ain't no debate.